So kind of keeping on with PersComs a little bit, how or what or can you share how kind of contributions from the Milsim community and things like what John Erickson's done with PersComs has influenced Formify? Has there been any influences on that side of, the Milsim units that are working with you? The PersComs, obviously, with Erickson, he's constantly updating and evolving PersComs.io. How's that influenced your decision making and the processes that you've gone through with Formify?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was just, me doing things that I thought were useful. And we call that sort of like the feature factory stage where you're just pumping out features, pumping out features, pumping out features, but nobody's really, has a use for them. But after a while, when we started bringing Third ID on board, for example, which was uh, probably the biggest undertaking because Third ID uses so many different things and so many different systems. And
Thank you.
I also did a I also did a bunch of custom development on Third ID,
Yeah.
which they obviously wanted to have in the new system as well. Um, so the requirements were constantly evolving. I had a timeline in my head, which was like, okay, well, in a couple of months we're gonna have this feature, and then in a couple of months we're gonna have that feature. But then when a community of ours comes and says like, hey, we're really missing X or Y feature, well then we gotta play into that, and we're gonna prioritize those features that are brought up by the community before we continue with our own idea of things. So we have a couple of features that have just been, pushed back and pushed back and pushed back because communities wanted different things, and we want to provide that to those communities. We don't want to do our own thing, right? Because if we're just going to do our own thing, then what's the point really? We want to help our communities, and we're going to build things that is useful to them. We don't just want to build things that are useful to nobody,
Yeah, makes
right?
sense.
So like you said before, the calendar was a great feature or a great example of that. The calendar was initially something I did not actually plan for Formify. It was going to be a plugin that you could like install, and we haven't even really started on making plugins yet. So it was going to be a long while before that was going to be a reality. But we had so many communities asking for it. We're like, all right, whatever. I'll spend a couple of weekends on that, and people seem to be really happy with that. So. Um, yeah, so
Yes,
the
yes, we
the
are.
influences from the the influences from the communities and from Perscom and from everybody that we're working with are really important to me.